How's it going, everyone? Season 1 of Alien Earth has completed, and the review data for the show reveals something very interesting about it, which reveals how the show really stands out compared to every single Alien movie ever made. So here we have the data from Rotten Tomatoes. On the vertical axis, we have the audience score. The higher a data point, the more the audience liked the movie or show. On the horizontal axis, we have the critics score. The more to the right a point is, the more the critics liked the movie or show. And along this diagonal here where we have this bar, that's the area where critics and audience agree, whether they agree on something being really good or really bad. The closer a point is to that bar, the more the audience and critics are in agreement. Everything above the yellow bar is things that the audience liked more than the critics. And everything below is things that the critics liked more than the audience. So here we have a data point for every Alien movie and Alien Earth ever made. And well, what we see right away is that they don't really seem to stray too far from the bar, so more or less the audience and critics are in agreement. But we do see certain groups of data points pop up if we look closer, and I'll help you see them. First of all, we see Alien and Aliens right at the top in the 90s. Nothing else close to them. The audience and the critics agree. They both really, really like these two films. This set the bar, and nothing came close to that region. So that's a group on its own. Then we see a number of data points here close to that bar. Okay, so we see really all the other Alien movies are here except the Alien vs. Predator movies. So these movies are ranked better or lower, but the audience and critics pretty much agree on them. The Alien vs. Predator movies have their own group down here, ranked very low by both the audience and the critics, although ranked a little bit better by the audience. And guess which data point is all by itself without any partners? Alien Earth. It's not close to that yellow line. The critics rank it as good as the first two Alien movies. They don't rank any other Alien films that good, only Alien Earth. Whereas the audience rank it at about 70. So the audience rank it as pretty good, while the critics rank it as amazing. There is no other Alien film that is ranked like that. Now, let me show you these groupings a little bit more clearly. See, we have them circled here. So what it shows us is that there's really three different types of Alien movies, and Alien Earth doesn't fall into any one of those categories. There's the first two, really loved by audience and critics, setting the bar. There's the Alien vs. Predator movies, which both audience and critics consider the weakest, and every other Alien movie is in between. Okay, but audience and critics agree that every other Alien movie is somewhere in between, and they pretty much agree on how to rank those other Alien films, with Romulus being the best of them, and Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection being among the worst, Prometheus being, second best after Romulus, and Covenant somewhere in the middle. Then you have Alien Earth all by itself. Okay? Really loved by the critics, considered pretty good by the audience. Now what's interesting is when we look at the data not in Rotten Tomatoes but in Metacritic, we actually see the same groups, but it's a bit more obvious to look at them. Let me show you. So this is the Metacritic data. Again, on the vertical axis, we have the audience score, except it's out of 10 instead of out of 100. And on the horizontal axis, we have the critics score. The places on the plot work the exact same way. So the groups are very obvious. We've got Alien and Aliens way up top, nothing else close to it. We've got the Alien vs. Predator movies way at the side here, ranked the lowest by the critics and mediocre by the audience. And every other Alien film is in the middle. Audience and critics pretty much agree. And you got Alien Earth by itself. Okay, the four groups here, three types of Alien movies, plus Alien Earth in its own category is much more obvious. I'll still bring in these little red hoops to show you what's going on. What's interesting is when we look at this middle group, the order is also the same. Romulus is the best, followed by Prometheus. Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection are more worse ranked. Covenant is somewhere in the middle, depending on whether you trust the audience or critics more. You might consider it better than Alien 3 or worse than Alien 3. Both consider it better than Alien Resurrection. And what we see when we compare these groups between Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes is it's the same groups. It's just with Rotten Tomatoes, it's like the groups are more stretched out between positive for both audience and critics and negative for both audience and critics. See? It's like you're just taking these hoops and stretching them out. Or if you're going from Rotten Tomatoes to Metacritic, it's like you're taking those hoops and compressing them. But the groups stay the same. Okay? And what we have here is, once again, the critics rank Alien Earth as good as Alien and Aliens. It is the only thing they rank as good as Alien and Aliens. They don't rank any other Alien films that good. Okay? We see that from the critics, both in Rotten Tomatoes and on Metacritic. And what do we see from the audience? Well, the Rotten Tomatoes audience ranks them on the higher end of that middle group of Alien movies, whereas the Metacritic audience ranks it on the lower end of that middle group of Alien movies. But in both cases, it's ranked somewhere around, like those middle in between Alien movies. So overall, if you kind of average audience score and critic score, well, what's the average between mediocre and really good? Well, the average between mediocre and really good is pretty good, right? So with overall Alien Earth received as pretty good, and the critics in both cases ranking it as good as the original two Alien films, which is really high up there, overall it looks like the show was pretty well received. And it's quite interesting that it was received in this unique way that no other Alien film has been received, right? There's no other Alien film that was ranked as good as Alien and Aliens, while considered, mediocre to pretty good by the audience. Now, what's interesting also, if you compare Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, is it seems that the Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience are just more extreme in their votes, right? What Metacritic would say is very good, Rotten Tomatoes would say is extremely good. What Metacritic would say is so mediocre, Rotten Tomatoes would say is pretty bad, right? That's why we see that stretching towards the extremes of that yellow line, right? So when we take that into consideration, right, Metacritic, it's all kind of more clumped together. Rotten Tomatoes, it's more spaced out, stretched out towards the extremes. Alien Earth, mediocre, so on Metacritic. What direction does it stretch towards when we look at Rotten Tomatoes? It stretches upward in the positive direction, unlike the Alien versus Predator movies, which stretch downward, okay? So between these two audience scores of Alien Earth being so on Metacritic or pretty good in Rotten Tomatoes, the audience that are saying so are the audience that tend to rank almost everything as being okay, so, not bad, right? But when you're asking audience who are more likely to call something really good or really bad, those audience, the Rotten Tomatoes audience, they rank Alien Earth as quite good, pretty good, 70%, okay? So that may be a more informative judgment, right? So with that judgment in mind and the incredibly high score from the critics, it looks like overall the show is received quite well, which makes it more likely that it will be approved for a second season. And personally, I would agree with the audience assessment for the top movies here. Okay, I think Alien and Aliens are the best ones, followed by Romulus. Prometheus and Alien Earth I'd rank about the same. It's it's a tough call to make which one's better. And then I'd put Covenant after that, and the other ones I'd rank afterwards. Although I'd probably put the original Alien vs. Predator above Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, but that's a whole other subject. So I hope you enjoyed this assessment, and I hope it shows you how Alien Earth really stands out. It's not like one of the other Alien films. It's in a category all on its own, as judged by the critics and audience combined. So, until next time.